Hello, and to everyone, and welcome to the Rules and Public Policy meeting for Monday, December 28th, 2020. Guess our last meeting of the year. You did receive an agenda from me. You did not receive meeting minutes. When I was reviewing my meeting minutes, it just didn't look right. It looked like there might be something missing. So I'm going to go back and watch the actual meeting and make sure that the meeting minutes are okay. And I will get those meeting minutes to all of you.
Yeah, we got fireworks going on.
Okay. So I have goals for 2021. The reason I have that as an agenda item, actually, we don't have to approve our agenda. I just kind of dove in. Does anybody have any questions about the agenda or issues or anything? Okay. So, and I look like I'm looking to the side because I have a double screen and I'm typing notes at the same time as we're in the meeting. So I'm not trying to look strange. It's so strange to see my name there. And okay, so one of the goals for 2021 that I have here is rules for committees. And so I wanted to, and I know that we have to do that as an entire council so that everybody can have some buy-in. And also, I just want to accomplish, even if I accomplish one thing in this committee, just one, I would be ecstatic about that, because I just feel like we're just not getting things done. And that's, I just like to have like like, this is what I did in 2020 list. And I couldn't really think of anything that I did. So that's nothing to do with you guys, but I would like to have some things, some goals. So one of the things I like to accomplish for 2021 is rules for committees. Can anybody else think of anything else as a committee that we can do?
Can I ask you to elaborate on rules for committees? You mean like all committees in general? And,
yes.
And that kind.
Right. You kind of muted there at the end.
Sorry, I let go of the button. So does that feed into where you have later on down in the old business, you have storage for agenda, meeting, and other documents? Is that kind of coincide with that or not?
No. So when I talk about rules for committees, I mean, like, for example, what I would like to have as a rule for like committees like that our meeting agendas have certain pieces of information on them. Like, it doesn't have to be the same format, but it should have the same information. So it should have the date, the time of the date and the time of the meeting. It should say who the chair, the vice chair, and the members are. And it should say who took the meeting minutes. And I know that I don't always put that on my meeting minutes, but I'm the one taking the meeting minutes. So I can just go back and kind of put, even in parentheses behind my name, meeting minutes. So I just want to, that's as an example, but obviously everybody would have to buy in to that. Another
so you're
example,
looking for a basic agenda template kind of thing.
Not just that, but also just in general, like for our committee. So like, we should be sending agendas and meeting minutes within a certain amount of time before the meeting starts. So, me sending the agenda to you guys an hour before the meeting starts, I think that you need more time. So, but I also think that we all need to agree, because I mean, it's not just me, I think we all should agree on what a reasonable amount of time is. That way we can, so if we all say, we need to get it 24 hours ahead of time, then I'd like to get that done. Beth, are you laughing at me?
No. I'm coughing or sneezing.
So that's what I mean when I say rules, just that the meeting minutes have to be, have a certain level of detail, that we have to send the agenda within this amount of time. If there's going to be some legislation, that we need to send it within this amount of time so that we can review it. Just some general rules that we can all agree that we can all follow when it comes to our committees.
So I'm kind of like a guest speaker. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So like I'm the world's worst at sending minutes out. And that's because I would be so much better if I had like a deadline over my head. I think possibly maybe, but I am with you. But the biggest thing though for me is like in all of like timelines and deadlines is I am so pissed off about getting legislation on our agenda for council way too late. Like I would like to find a way to make it to where the administration has enough time to get it to us so we can actually read it in time to have it on our agenda, if that makes sense. Like I'm not trying to be an ass, but like I feel like we're blindsided all the time with stuff, but we set a rule Wednesday at 10 o'clock at night, and clearly that is not helping. So with me, I will admittedly say that I am horrible at posting minutes or even doing minutes, but I don't want to be blindsided by stuff either.
I think
I
that
could butt in for a second here.
absolutely.
I mean, I'm hearing a couple things, and it just, a lot of this stuff is balancing. There's pros and cons to it. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned about setting too many rules with committees is that it can be a bit of a turn off for people volunteering to chair the committees. If they feel like they've got more responsibilities to deal with. I'm definitely for having form, Matt, for meeting minutes in terms of compliance with the Open Meetings Act. I think we could make a format and all agree on it and pass it out. Regarding, legislation on the agenda for regular council meetings, I mean, the problem with that is if you had a hard, fast rule and you stand by it and you never deviate, there's always going to be emergencies, right? Number one. Some of those are self-created, others are imposed by third parties, but nonetheless, there's emergencies. Number two, we don't really have the power to make rules necessarily for the administration. My feeling is if they bombard us last second and it's an emergency, we deal with it. If it's not and people want to vote to throw it into a committee, we've done it. We can continue to do it,
Right. Well,
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happens if we get bombarded with something that necessarily, actually, it doesn't have an emergency clause. It doesn't seem to be an emergency, but really it is an emergency because we literally got it at the last minute. And there's a deadline looming over our heads. How do we fix that?
Well, if we could think of a way to fix that, we should tell every other small government in the state of Ohio. I mean, some of it is just welcome to managing small government. I mean, this is essentially stuff that happens. I mean, it's just sometimes counties, they issue certain language that they ask cities to pass, and they do it last minute because you have to understand we have 3 readings, but a lot of other cities only have 2 readings. That's kind of probably the average. So a lot of times the county isn't going to pass out legislation a month and a half before it's due. They might pass it out a month or 2 weeks before it's due. Other times, like the other day where there was something we needed to amend because there was a problem. It's just some of this stuff, we think that we're the only ones that it happens to, and that's not true. It happens to a lot of small governments, and I've heard a lot of other small government politicians complain about the same thing. I don't know what to say. I mean, you got to kind of accept it, and you have to deal with it on a case-to-case basis.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Stop
What
calling me Madam Chair.
I'm not like, my meetings are like everybody talks, like we discuss, like I don't, Miss Underwood, Mr. Miller Novak, what if it's something as simple as like the street levy, yeah? So like, we knew that that was gonna expire. We knew that we needed to get that on a ballot real quick, but actually we didn't know until Mrs. Orb asked. And then it came out that we had to do this right quick, like right quick, right fast, right now. Like if it's like repetitive pieces of legislation, like the skip grants, ODOT legislation, like how do we set a standard that the normal, like ongoing historical, if you will, pieces of legislation don't bite us in the ass to make us have to rush things through?
Amber,
Like,
everything you just stated has nothing to do with council. It
but it
has
does,
everything to do, no, it has everything to do with an administration, and council picks up the pieces and
but
makes it work.
but 90%, you're right, you are right, but like council, like I know that 90%, I won't even say that, I know that there are members of council who hate to suspend readings on anything. Even if it's something that the state hands us, like they want to be able to read it and understand it first. And oftentimes they are not given that chance before it goes onto a council agenda, because here it is, we have to do this right then and there. Like, how do we prevent that going forward? Like,
Well, Amber, one of the things, I guess, one of the goals that we can have is have a committee of the whole meeting about the council rules, because I believe that that's in the council rules. So maybe we can have a committee of the whole meeting for the council rules to address that specific issue, because that issue is kind of separate from the issue that I was just discussing, which is just kind of, this has to do with us and how we kind of handle our committees. And the only reason I'm saying that is because as I'm kind of going through the documents that I've created for the Public Safety Committee, and then just most recently for the Rules and Public Policy Committee, I would like, if for whatever reason, when I'm no longer on council, I want somebody to be able to go back, number one, and find the documents, very easily find them, and to kind of, and also to understand and know what happened at the meeting without having to actually go and watch the meeting. And
okay,
if they have a question, they can actually see who took the minutes, go ask that person questions if the person's still around, and if not, know who kind of took the minutes. I want to have just make things easier for us, and for people who are going to be on council in the future. And one of the things I was going to suggest, and just kind of for us, is if, and obviously we'll have to present this to the administration in some kind of way, but once we figure out like how we're going to do our documents and how we're going to update them, I hope our copier machine has a scanner. I would like to hire somebody part-time to scan all those old documents into a place so that they're in digital format, so that we can hire somebody part-time, or maybe advise the administration to hire somebody part-time and pay them $10 an hour, $13 an hour, whatever, to get that done for us. It shouldn't take any longer than a few months. I'd like to do that as well. I just want to make it just so that it's not like this. You're going through the file cabinet and you're looking at these old documents, and there's stuff missing here and stuff missing there. I just want to make it just neat and clean, and just and a lot of what you were talking about, Miss Bailey, it's just that we really don't have any control over that, except if we modify the council rules, which we can do. I can put that on our goals for 2021, but that also would require a committee of the whole. So maybe we can do that.
Absolutely. And Ms. Underwood, so where I'm at with that as being the chair of one committee and the interim, i.e. like chair of another committee, but you know, I feel like that I heard once upon a time that if it was on ICRC, that actually served as our meeting minutes because that was public record. So since
No, that's not correct.
okay. So even if ICRC and people can go back and watch it, that's not actual minutes. We have to put them on a paper or document form.
I believe so. And I would like, again, I think that, I don't know how that works. So Mary Jo, you've been around, Matt, you've been around, just explain to me, like, if we can all agree, and I mean council, if we can all agree that this is what we want to do, this is how we want to get everything fixed, and we can pay somebody $10 an hour to work, go in there part-time, organize all that stuff for us, get it scanned in, and get that done. How do we do that?
My first question would be, would it be feasible to use the city secretary to do that
Yes.
instead of hiring somebody to do it?
Yes. I don't think we're allowed to tell her what to do.
Oh,
Can you guys hear me now?
I didn't use the word tell. I mean,
We can ask.
yeah.
We can
I mean, I
resolve.
wouldn't be opposed to asking her if she, no, I'm gonna not get crappy right now, but I would not be opposed to asking her in her spare time if she could do that for us.
Am I, can you hear me now?
Yes. Now
Okay.
you have to keep yourself off of mute.
Well, I have a button that does that, but I mean, just to respond about the televised thing in meeting minutes, it depends whether or not what you've designated as your official record. But typically speaking, you want to have written minutes and not rely on video.
Madam Chair.
There's also the retention policy. I don't know how long ICRC would retain their videos.
Mr. Miller Novak, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So if other committees designated that ICRC would be the meeting minutes like record and everybody voted cool in that committee, would that work to have it as the record or the minutes for that committee or those committees?
Probably not. I'd want it to be a resolution from regular council, but there's a lot of risk. And, Mary Jo kind of mentioned the idea of retention. I mean, anything could happen. I would always want to double up with written meeting minutes. So, because the problem was there was this case, it was Lawn versus Cardington, where there was a community that was relying on recordings as their meeting minutes, but because the recordings weren't clear and you couldn't hear people's voice, it was held to violate the Open Meetings Act. So, I mean, there's just other technical problems that can go wrong.
I would also question the whole point of availability. If you don't have access to the internet, how do those people have any access to minutes?
Well, and I agree with that a lot too, because I mean, for some reason, if I'm really interested in what the government's doing, and I want to know what happened to a council meeting 3 months ago, I'd rather look through the meeting minutes in like 15 minutes than watch an hour and a half, right? There's an accessibility aspect to meeting minutes that's far superior than video anyways.
So right quick though, if we're not getting the benefit, if you will, I'm going to air quote that, of committee meetings being as part as like the minutes being recorded by ICRC, then why are they at our committee meetings? When in other towns and townships and cities and villages, they're only at their council meetings. Like, what is the added benefit of paying them more money to
We
have
asked them to be here a couple years ago and we've never changed that.
I actually think it's a good idea. Because I do from time to time go back and review the meetings to make sure that my minutes or my notes are detailed. And again, I think that at least until we get our rules or guidelines, I'm going to call them guidelines. Maybe that makes Mr. Miller Novak feel more warm and fuzzy about this. Guidelines for committees. Just you know, I would be, I don't know how comfortable I would be until we can get, you know, kind of ourselves to a place where all of this stuff is in writing and it's in a place where we can all go and find it very easily. I think that it just needs to be in writing and also in a file cabinet. If, you know, if there's somebody who wants to find it there. And I just, I don't know how it works to ask that person to help us in her spare time. Not going to make any snarky comments about that, I promise.
So I have a suggestion that might be beneficial and yet might piss off 4 people. But what about making the vice chair of all committees the official note taker so that the chair can run the meeting while the vice chair is taking minutes?
You will not piss me off, pretty please.
I'd prefer to take my own minutes, but I mean, that's
But you could still have the option of editing them. Like you could have your vice chair do them and then send them to you and you could still edit them.
But then are we getting too minute at that point? Like, I'm going to be honest, I wish my vice chair would take minutes all the time because she is far better than I am.
I told you that I would do that for you, which is why I'm throwing it out for these
I'm
meetings.
just saying that, like, if I have to approve them, then, like, that's cool too. But, like, Miss Underwood, I get, like, you were 100% like, I'll do it on my own, and that's awesome. But me, we all know I got a touch of the ADD. So, like, if my vice chair wants to make that a rule, I'm all for it over here.
Okay, so I guess my point is that we've kind of brainstormed some things that we might want to address, but I would like to kind of have that in a committee of the whole, just to make sure that we all can get on board with that, because we still don't have a chair for that, for the recreation. I don't even know what it's called, a recreation committee. And I just want to make sure that everybody's kind of on board with whatever our guidelines are. So that's just kind of a goal that I'd like to set for 2021. And I guess another goal we can set is council rules, to modify council rules to address some of the other issues that Ms. Bailey mentioned. Anything else that anybody can think about that we might accomplish? A goal?
I had a thought.
Okay.
I know that there's been some talk of, you know, oversight of law direction and things like that, and I just think maybe it's best if this committee, depending on what we do with the law director, ultimately, if this committee would be probably the right committee to, I don't know, just work with the law director and in terms of evaluating things like that. I think this is probably the place to do it.
What do you mean? I don't understand what you mean, Mr. Miller Novak.
Well, the question is, you know, if we're going to end up ultimately engaging into an extended contract or more service than what we're currently doing, you know, just setting guidelines of representation and things like that on an ongoing basis, or, you know, having discussions with them. I mean, you know, most of our, like, I guess for lack of better terms, our department heads report to committees, right? You know, if you have public safety, I mean, a lot of times fire department and whatever kind of reports to that committee, I think this is a good committee to use to um, just have the law director report to if needed.
So, right quick, currently we're paying him like, we're gonna say for the sake of math, $33,000, right? And so with the requests that are coming in, we want to see him at council meetings. Maybe the every once in a while a committee meeting. And then I'm trying to figure out like $54,000 to $60,000. Like, what are our expectations from him? Because let's be honest, there's been a vote of no confidence in him in the past. And I kind of just want to get a feel of like, what do we want from our law director, whether it be him or another law director? Like, what do we want? Coming to all council meetings.
Well, for me, that's it. I'd prefer to have a law director at most, if not all, regular meetings. It here's the deal. I mean, one of the things that we're disadvantaged is that whenever we need advice kind of on the fly, we don't have that. I know what I
And it
know, and
turns
that's
into
great.
a lawsuit.
It could, I mean, theoretically speaking, or it just turns into a compliance matter, right? Or it turns into something else. I mean, it's not all legal errors end in litigation. Some just, you know, they end in administrative clusters, right? And just annoyance and manpower. But you know, the other thing um, about having him at more meetings is just, you know, having him not legislate in a vacuum, right? I mean, you know, the more informed he is and the more he knows about the operation, what's going on, the more invested he is. It's just, but I can just tell you, you know, when you represent a company and you just dabble in it sometimes, it's a little bit more difficult than when it's a regular client that you talk to on a regular basis.
That makes sense. So right now, and forgive me if I'm being an ass, but does he charge us for like arbitration or negotiating contracts or no? Or is that part
He
of
does-
it?
My understanding is that he
yes.
does.
He charges us
Well,
extra?
he charges us extra for, he's always going to charge us extra for litigation. Arbitration is litigation, right? It's just the difference is you have a private decision maker who's not a judge.
Right.
Most of them are ex-judges,
sorry.
right? But it's still litigation, right? It's just a
No.
different forum than a court.
I'm sorry. Like I said, I knew I would say that wrong. Does he charge us for
For
Negotiations.
negotiation, my understanding is yes, but he does not. He would not. That would be part of the flat rate, right? So under the flat rate that we're talking about, we would get them at all of our council meetings. Negotiation would be included. The only thing that won't be included is arbitration and litigation. But I hate saying that as two different words, just because they're the same thing. It's just litigation. The difference is because
Actually, Matt, I thought he said that he would include arbitration. No?
no,
So
because
Okay.
it's still
arbitration
litigation.
is in front of a third party. Litigation is in front of a judge, right?
Yeah, arbitrators are private people who are paid essentially to arbitrate a matter and make a final decision sometimes, but they're not always final. It most of the time you only have arbitrations when you have collective bargaining units. So part of like public unions is arbitration. So that's why we even have arbitration. So if any of our officers, let's just say, have a dispute and feel like Chief Schran violated a contractual provision in their discipline or something like that, you arbitrate it. You don't go to a court. You handle that in an arbitration.
Do we think that it's worth it?
I personally do.
What? I I do too. The only reason I say that, Amber, is because, I mean, I wasn't around for some of the issues in the past, but I really believe if you have an active law director, somebody who comes to meetings and can say, you know what, that's what you're doing right now is a bad idea. Obviously, he needs to get more familiar with our charter and more familiar with our council rules so that he can give us good advice. And, you know, I did take the advice of Mr. Miller Novak, and I did kind of call around to see, you know, what law directors make, you know, the good ones. And, you know, obviously we just don't want, I mean, even if we get like a solo practitioner who's going to charge us significantly less, if something goes wrong, we'll still end up having to hire a law firm to represent us or to handle, you know, you know, that kind of thing, like, you know, just stuff that I think that, you know, Bill Dieter's law firm can handle for us. So I think it's just kind of like car insurance. You know, you hope you never get into an accident and you try not to get into an accident. So you let the person cut you off and you slow down and not crash into their car, even though they would be at fault, to avoid your insurance going up. But at the same time, you know, you pay your car insurance because you want, something goes wrong, you want your car fixed.
So like, I 199% agree with you, but this is my only hesitation, right? My only hesitation in all of this is that, like, and I'm not saying with all due respect to be like completely disrespectful, but like, Miss Underwood, you and Mr. Miller Novak, you guys are lawyers. You guys know like what law you're part of. Like, you know your stuff, right? I feel like if either one of you guys, hypothetically speaking, were hired to represent a city, the very first thing that you would do would be to read the charter of that city. And again,
Well,
like, I am team Mr. Dieters all day. I have 100% faith in him, but like, I feel like if you have like a lapse in like the charter of the city that you're representing, that your office is in, I kind of feel a little weird about that.
well, but
I
here's the
don't,
thing.
Amber. I mean, I haven't memorized it, and I'm a lawyer, and I've read it. I've read it probably 5 times. You know, there's certain parts of it I know because they came up, and I had to use them to address something. But the rest, man, I don't know. Like, there's a miscellaneous section. I don't know what the hell it says in there. I mean, you don't. You know, a good lawyer doesn't memorize law, right? That's kind of
Right.
like a misconception. A good lawyer knows how to research law and apply it well, and that's it. You know, I mean, a sloppy lawyer is the one that tries to work from memory. So I don't know. I think that's a misconception people have. You know, I think I've always said it. If you ever go into a law library and they're like 3, 4 floors, you think I memorized every word in the damn building? I mean, it's impossible, right?
That's why I'm asking you. Like, I'm trying to ask you guys experience, I guess. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so I'll ask you guys. Like, but there are times that I feel like once a charter question is raised, like he just completely fails at.
Again, I agree with Matt. You just have to be familiar enough with the charter, obviously, to know kind of and where to go to look for the answer, but you definitely want to check the answer and verify it. And in addition to reading the charter, you want to make sure, you know, the case law is also following the advice that you're giving to your council or your city or whomever it is. So I mean, I agree with you. I want him to be familiar with the charter, but he can't, there's no way he can memorize it. And, you know, there's no way he can memorize the council rules, but you know, obviously I'm sure he knows like those cases that Mr. Miller Novak can kind of rattle off the top of his head. I'm sure he's familiar with those cases as well. I just think that it would be, I just want him to be present at the meetings and kind of understand, you know, instead of getting, 2 or 3, perspectives of what happened at the meeting and where this came from. If he's there and he kind of hears it, then he can give us better advice about how to proceed with a particular issue.
So like one last question and then I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm asking for educational purposes. Like when it comes to case law though, like if there's like a case that, I don't know, beats all circumstances in any other area, don't you think that like a law director should be able to tell you or could tell you or should tell you that, hey, you need to amend your charter based on Smith versus Smith?
Well,
Yeah.
and that's the thing,
Maybe.
Amber. Case law
Oh.
changes all of the time, right?
Right, but
Um,
something like Roe versus Wade, like I would hope that my law director would be like, Smith versus Smith is like this, do that now. And I don't feel like we ever get that input, like, and that's just me speaking, like, and I have all the confidence in the world of Mr. Dieters, but like, I'm kind of like
well,
trying to
we're,
figure it
we're
out.
not really paying him we're not paying him to do that. And, you've got to respect a lawyer's time. We've got to honor that. And I know that, there was
That's
an
the bare
agreement.
basic, though. That's the bare basic of like defending or a city or like being like the legal solicitor of a city is like if something like ground shattering comes across, like you should at least in my mind give them like, hey, you need to change your charter because of this. Like, and that hasn't happened like with us that I know of, knock on wood, but like how do we know if our charter is up to date with case law? I guess is what I'm asking. Like, is that what we're paying for, or do we need to pay for that?
Amber, I get
Yes,
in
sir.
here. So, number one, stop apologizing for your questions. They're all actually very good. And when you ask questions like this is a way to get things out and to clear up misconceptions. So, no need to apologize. They're very good questions. But the one thing you have to understand, about the state of Ohio is a home rule state, which
Mm-hmm.
has pros and cons. The pros is that it allows communities to kind of specifically tailor their charter if they choose to be a charter to fit their needs for one reason or another. The con is that a lot of times case law will one city will have a case that will end in one circumstance because of the way the charter was written, where the same exact circumstance in another city would go completely the different way. So it is very difficult to practice local law in the state of Ohio because it is a home rule state. Regarding the charter, no, that's not really his job in the sense that your charter is never going to be wrong because it's an at-will. It's a not an at-will. I'm sorry, I'm so used to talking employment law. It's a home rule state, so it's kind of impossible for your charter to be wrong. The only things that your charter can really violate is the Ohio Constitution, which just requires certain charter review provisions and things like that that you can't opt out of. That's why we have to do one every 5 years and things like that. Those rules that we talk about, those are actually from the Ohio Constitution. The charter couldn't violate free speech and some other constitutional things, but other than that, every city somewhat is tailored into itself. So it's very difficult. So yeah, he's never going to say that because it's never an issue unless it's an issue. And if it was an issue, it'd already be an issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just like I get that some case law is like a cliff. It's like jump or don't jump. I just don't want to be in quicksand. Does that make sense? Like,
Well, usually what a good lawyer is going to do, okay, you have to look at it this way. You've got a child, right? How many times in your life do you tell your kid, don't put your finger in there, right? And sometimes he's going to listen and other times he's not. And he's going to suffer the consequences of sticking his finger where you told him not to. The problem is when you don't have a lawyer around, right? No one's ever there to say, don't stick your finger in there. I mean, things are going to still go wrong in the sense that there's going to be days, and we're not the last counsel that's going to be in the city, and he's probably not the last lawyer, but nonetheless, different councils might refuse to listen to the advice of the law director and might break their finger or burn their finger, even though they were told not to put it there. Trust me, I got clients that don't listen to a damn thing I say, and then they come back crying later why their finger got burnt. So nonetheless, I think what's important is to have him there. Now, he might not know the answer, but a good lawyer typically will say, hey guys, okay, that's a good idea, but let me look it up, right? Let me review it to make sure it's okay. I'll get back to you in a week. But if he's not there, he doesn't even know to do that. That's the point of having a lawyer engaged on a constant basis.
Right. Okay. That definitely gives us some goals. I like that. I think that, so I have rules for committees, or rules/guidelines for committees, modifying council rules, and working with the law director as a part of this committee, like just as a kind of as a oversight, just the same way that the other departments have, some connection to some committee. Is that about right? Yes. No. Bueller.
I'm not on this committee,
Yes.
but yeah, huh?
Okay. So
Can I just make one little comment?
absolutely.
So,
You
so
can make
the-
a big comment.
Okay, good, because this might be bigger than it needs to be.
Okay.
So in our current charter, in section 8.03, powers and duties of the director of law or law director. The law director shall act as the legal advisor, attorney, and counsel for the city and its officers in matters related to their official duties. The law director, at the request of the city administrator, shall prepare all contracts, bonds, and other instruments in writing in which the city is concerned, and shall endorse approval of their forms. The law director shall represent the city in all suits or cases in which it may be a party, and shall prosecute for the offenses against the ordinances and resolution of the city. My point is, the document that we have from the law director says that he will do what's in the charter for whatever it is, $50,000. To me, even the extra work that he says he'll do at an extra fee is in that. So if he's going to do his job according to the charter, there's no extra fees.
Then he technically owes us money in my mind. Again, budget and finance.
No, that's not how it works, guys.
Okay.
That's not how it works. That's the powers available to the law director. It has nothing to do with a fee agreement. And that's what it is. It's a fee agreement. So anybody we engage services with are going to have those powers and responsibilities and abilities. They can structure their payment schedule for that any way that they choose. And that's part of negotiation to hire a law director. It's just simply not how it works. That's just his power. And to tell you the truth, I mean, as a practical matter, 9 times out of 10, if your city's being sued for certain things, the law director isn't going to represent your city anyways, because we're part of an insurance pool. So a lot of times litigation is actually going to be insurance provided counsel, which we don't even get to pick, because that's what happens if you get sued for violating someone's First Amendment rights and someone sues to enjoin you and for attorney's fees and damages. We call the insurance pool. They assign their chosen counsel to us, and Bill Dieters is only just doing like a little bit of relay work, so to speak, at his fee. So that's just not how it works.
Mr. Miller Novak, do you think that his fees are fair based on his comprehension, his work ethic, the city? Do you think that that's all fair based on the position?
Do I? Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I think they're cheap. I mean, I don't know. I've said that like I don't know how many times I can intimate, but I think
Plenty.
that
No,
his
you've said that plenty. I kind of just want like
fees are low.
I want like your thoughts on it, I guess, like your uncandid, like your thoughts on the whole matter. Like, you know, where we've been, where we are, like you beat him in a court case, like, and so do you have faith in him? Is this where you would put your last dollar bill, I guess? Like,
Well, I don't know if that necessarily beat him, quote unquote. He was not the insurance counsel assigned to it. Number one, and number two, the
okay.
facts and law were on my side, so I don't think it would have been his fault either way. But um,
So he couldn't have
you know,
fixed it.
but nonetheless, and the circumstances that led to that litigation was not. It was the prior law director that sat there and allowed that to happen. So I don't really think it was his fault how it came down. And would I have agreed with all his decisions when he handled it? Not necessarily, but that's just part of it, right? Litigation's kind of a wild beast. The question is more him keeping us on task, him being there, giving us good advice. And my feeling is every time an employment matters come up or labor matters come up, I think he's done a really good job. I think that's kind of a strong point, quite frankly, is labor negotiations. They represent all those school boards, and quite frankly, that's a big part of school board representation is dealing with labor and union contracts. I think he's really good at that. He knows a lot of stuff off the top of his head that I do not know, because my job is suing government, so it's not running them. So there's a lot of things about running governments and compliance that I'm not aware of, and that's why I want him there. I mean, let's just put it this way: if I felt like I knew all a bunch of stuff that he didn't know, I wouldn't want him. Why? Why would I want to spend money on him? The fact I want him there shows that I feel that he knows things that I don't know, so I want him
Are you saying you can learn from someone right now?
there. I have. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I mean, there's been a couple times where I just wanted a second opinion on a case that I was working on, and I've called Bill and just talked shop, and I mean, it's helpful, and vice versa. So yeah, all lawyers can learn off one another, but there's certainly things that he knows that I don't know, and probably vice versa. But I do prefer his attendance, and I think it adds value to our conversations when it comes to employees and other matters and potential conflicts.
Okay, so I am going to just kind of put that, so under my next agenda item, action items, that's just gonna be something from now on that I'm gonna add to every agenda, something that I need to follow up on. And that's gonna be, I guess, trying to schedule a committee of the whole to address these particular issues.
Miss Underwood.
Yes.
So with that, the other night when I asked that we wouldn't have a meeting on January 1st, we have to have an air quote organizational meeting before I think the 6th or the 8th of every year. We may not have to have a committee of the whole. Our next council meeting may serve as your meeting that you want to go over rules as an organizational meeting.
Okay, well, if that's appropriate, I'm certainly willing to do that. But I'm not a fan of 2 and 3 hour meetings. I hate that because mostly because by 9 o'clock I'm getting sleepy. And
I'm completely with you on that one. However, I feel like that where we are setting the limits on our meetings from 7:30 to 8:30, we're having more meetings and draining us quickly. Like, I'd rather just rip the Band-Aid off at one time, if that makes sense, especially when it comes to council rules. Like, yeah.
Okay. You know, if that meeting has been scheduled, or if it's on the same, is it on the same day every year? What's the deal with?
So for me, unfortunately, just for me speaking, because apparently this isn't a thing, it's been on January 1 at noon every year since I've been on council, but that's
Organizational meeting shall be held on or before January 10th.
January 10th.
Hang on, following each general election of council members. We didn't have a general election of council members, so
Okay.
it doesn't have to
So-
be.
So we don't have to have one, or we just don't have to have it before the 10th?
So all we have on our first council meeting, as far as legislation goes, is the salary ordinance. So why not knock out call of members, committee reports, and just get it done on our first council meeting?
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
So cross like all of the reports out and legislation, whatever, blah, 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 and get it done then. But everybody will need an updated copy of the council rules, and I'm not sure if everybody is working on the same copy of those. It's like the budget. There's like 30 copies running out, and who knows who's on what. So just a heads up.
Okay. Legislation, I don't have anything. Does anybody have anything? Okay. Old business. I think the mayor's veto was some old business on our agenda, but I think it's moot now since
It's not.
huh?
I don't think it is, because once the new legislation is passed for the salary ordinance, I would say she's going to veto that, even if she has the correct, even if the reason that she gave us to veto it is incorrect via our law director, she's still going to veto that one. So
Okay, well, the one that she already gave us is moot because we just passed something new. So
It is
let-
currently, yes.
it's currently moot. So I'm just gonna table it for now and just say that it's moot. If she issues a veto on the new salary ordinance that we just passed, or we're trying to pass, or whatever it is that we're doing, then we'll bring it back up and address it at that time in a timely fashion. Because I think these are all time sensitive. Storage.
You know, the
old
one thing to
business-
have to look at, Erica, I mean, I don't know if you know, but you know, I guess I never looked. We could ask Bill, I mean, whether or not she's allowed to line item veto, or she has to veto the entire ordinance.
According to the charter, she can.
So
yeah,
she can veto a line then, just
Yes.
like okay,
Yes.
okay. That's different than the president. The president cannot.
He thinks he can.
He thinks all kinds of things, but he can't.
but she knows she can't.
Well,
she-
apparently the mayor can. I guess
mayor
that's what I'm
can.
getting, because I haven't looked. I mean, I'm sure it did at some point, but so the difference between a line item veto is you just veto part of a ordinance and not the entire ordinance. Some places, Amber, it's all or none.
Right. So like what happens when the mayor, in essence, vetoes a line item and her reasoning is false?
What do you mean?
Well, you don't have to be right to veto, right? So
She doesn't
veto
have
is
to
not like
provide
a
a
right.
reason at all, right?
Yeah, you could have the dumbest reason to veto something in the face of the earth, but if you want to veto it, you can veto it. I mean, that's
Right.
all there is to it, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
And then if we want to override it, we can override it, and we could have the dumbest reason for doing that. So, you know, there's a difference between having the power to do something and doing it for the right reason or the wrong reason.
So Matt, just to make sure you understand, it's section 9.10 mayor's veto. The mayor may approve or disapprove the whole or any item of an ordinance or resolution appropriating money.
Yep. Yeah, she's got a line item veto right then. So, yep.
But she does have, she has to, it says if he or she does not return such ordinance or resolution within the time specified, which is 10 days after its passage. And actually it says return it with his or her objections to council. So that almost sounds like in writing to me, but it doesn't specifically say that.
Well, I think my memory is that if she does nothing within 10 days, it passes, right?
That is correct. If she does nothing within 10 days, it passes.
Right. The president's the same way, unless Congress is in recess or something like that. But so for the most part, Amber, that her veto power is very flexible. She could veto just one sentence or the entire thing or half the thing. And if she does nothing within 10 days, it becomes law. After she vetoes something, we'd have to, what's the vote, Mary Jo, to override it? Is it 2/3? Is it, what is it?
2/3, yes.
So 6 out of 7.
Yeah, it
I think
says council after 10 days may reconsider it. It doesn't say how long we have to reconsider it. It just says not until after 10 days. And it takes 2/3 of a vote elected and it to beat the override veto.
Okay. So if she vetoes the new salary ordinance, we may have to have a special meeting to make sure that we are within time to address that veto, and we'll just, I'll make sure.
We do not have a timeline. She
we
has a
don't have a
timeline.
Okay,
Our timeline is we can only do it after 10 days. We don't
Whenever
have,
we see
it
fit.
doesn't say, right, but I'm just saying, so she has, so let's say we pass something on the 4th, right? So she has until the 14th to get it to us. And then on the 24th, we can reconsider it. Does that make sense?
yes.
But we don't
Thank you very
have
much for
to
that.
on the 24th. We just
But
have,
we don't have.
we
a
cannot do
deadline.
it before the 10 days.
Okay. All right.
At least
Sounds
that's
good.
the way I understand it. But again, I only practice law on this committee.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. That's the way you read it. That's the way I understand it. So we just can't override a veto earlier than 10 days after the veto. But seemingly we have an endless period of time to do it. That's kind of wonky, but nonetheless, that's the way I would understand it.
Okay. So the only other things on our agenda, because it's 7:30, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, is storage for agendas, minutes, and other documents. We kind of talked about that briefly. I do want to talk about that a little bit more, so that we can kind of get that resolved. That's something that I've been kind of working on, so I want to definitely get that resolved. Is there any new business from any members?
I have a question. Do we want to put anything about the Charter Review Commission in here or anything about that? Do we need
I
to
am still
mention it
trying
in
to
our goals or?
I'm still trying to understand whether or not we actually had to have the people in place when we created the Charter Review Commission or not. And I don't have an answer for that. So as soon as I get an answer for that, I will. Okay, so I'm going to put that under action items. Charter Review Commission.
Erica, I think you do. My understanding is you had to have it formed by whatever the listed deadline is. That means, because the last time we did it, I did it, and I think the same question came up, and I didn't know, and I think Bill answered. And from what I remember, the result was a mad scramble to find people real quick. And I think that's why. And then after you have it set up by that deadline, then you have to finish your work within 6 months is the other deadline. So the first one is getting it, like the resolution to have it and then all the people assigned to it by the first deadline, and then the second deadline is they need to finish their work within 6 months.
Okay, so the people have to be actually on that initial resolution.
Yeah, I think that's what Bill told me last time, because I just remember,
Okay.
well, you were one of the people that got called. I think maybe the mayor called you. I don't remember how you went down. I remember calling Pat Boss. I mean, it was like a mad dash to get it done in time. And that's the only reason it would have been a mad dash. So that's what I remember.
Well, I mean, what I'll say to you, Mary Jo, is that if we didn't do what we needed to do, obviously we can just create a charter review commission for 2021, and then we'll have plenty of time to get our names in place, and without having a mad scramble, since we know that that's something that we want to do. So,
Okay,
and then
but
we
can I just say that that 6-month clock is ticking whether it's good or not. So if it is good, you might want to, light a fire.
So we need to figure it out. Okay.
Yeah,
I will, I have it under action items, so that will let me know that that's something I need to work on. Okay, so any other new business? Okay, so I will say that our meeting is adjourned at 7:33 p.m. Just a couple of minutes late, but I think that we're all on the next committee as well, so I think it'll be okay. So at this time, I will call the meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Did everybody get the agenda for that?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Same thing here. The meeting minutes just looked a little sparse to me, and I think probably I had my auto save turned on and somehow I missed a version or something like that. So I'm just gonna make sure that the meeting minutes are correct, and then I'll make sure that I get them to everyone to review. I also have here some goals I'd like to set for 2021. Obviously, I would suggest, the fire levy is a huge one. Does anybody else have any other goals that we can maybe have for this committee?
I don't recall getting the like the results of the fire task force in writing. Did we get that and I just didn't file it?
I believe, I know that Brian wrote something. He wrote a really fantastic summary. So if you did not get that, I will make sure to forward that to you.
I remember the mayor giving a verbal response at one of the meetings, but I don't recall anything in writing, and maybe I just missed it.
No, maybe not. I will make sure you get it. Okay. Any other goals for this committee that we can have? I can't think of anything. Although just a levy is a big thing.
Well, that's probably the biggest, right? I mean, that's going to take up a lot of time too.
For sure. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
In regards to the levy, I actually have like an email from Mr. Fells that says that even 13 mills won't sustain us for more than 5 years. So I'm kind of like behind on all of the levy talks, but what are we talking about as far as millage goes for the fire department?
I don't want to misquote anything, and honestly, I don't remember. I do know that it was, whatever it was not the highest amount, and it wasn't the lowest amount either. It wasn't as much as Mount Healthy has currently passed. And there are some flaws in what Mount Healthy did. So I'd really like to get that document, send it to you guys, have you guys take a look at it and review it. And then, I would be, because I just don't recall off the top of my head what the details were.
Can we ask that the fire task force comes to a council meeting or committee of the whole just to bring everybody up to speed at one point in time or another?
The
Our task
entire,
force is here. Erica was on it.
yes, that was me.
Right, but like, I know Erica's on it, Mr. Graver's on it, right? Or was
Right.
on it? Is that
Yes.
who is talking about the millage behind the levy?
It was a combination of everybody. So Maureen Mason was on it. Laureen Knapp, I think her name is. She was
Zap.
on it. Huh?
ZAPF, Zap.
That, okay. She was on it. I'm bad with names sometimes. Trying to think. And there were several firefighters who were on it as well. So I think you have I think that if we just have Mr. Fells and me and Mr. Graver present at a meeting, I think that we can probably answer all of everybody's questions.
Yeah, for me, it's not about like representation or a point person. It's more about the conversation, like amongst everybody, for me to pick their brains and them to pick my brains. I'm sorry, get the lightsaber out of here now.
Okay, let's see.
Make sure that goes in the minutes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, guys. Like, he has a new lightsaber and it's like super important that he just, waves it around and shows me. And like, I don't understand it. But again, like, I think it would be cool just to have the conversation amongst everyone just so I can understand. Because for me, it's going to be hard wrapping my mind around the millage so high that I know that I've been told in previous times would not be sufficient enough.
Okay, so, well, I don't know that Ms. Zapp will be able to do that. I know that she had an issue that caused her to resign from the task force. So I'm not certain whether she would be available to do what you're asking, but I will certainly kind of figure out who all the members were and see if we can get them all in a place at a committee of the whole meeting or something, so that you can kind of pick everybody's brain. But I think that what I will tell you from my memory is that there were some people who wanted it to be at the lowest number, and there were some people who wanted it to be at the highest number, and who really felt like, we were doing, ourselves a disservice, by trying to do anything else. And then there were some people who were concerned that, if we allowed the current levy to lapse without having something in its place, then, we would really, we would put ourselves in a really, kind of dire circumstance, just based on some of the things or some of the issues the fire department has had, most notably when the young man was run over by a car and we didn't have enough employees to get him to the hospital. We had to have a police officer actually go to the hospital with them on the ambulance to make sure that we had the correct number of people on the ambulance. So
I wish that could be the start. My neighbor actually died of cardiac arrest because there was nobody there to help him. So I understand completely. Like, it's a thing here.
yeah, and I think that there was also some discussion about, there was some concern from some people that, doing a levy that, increases the amount that some of our residents would pay would be problematic because, we have a significant number of elderly residents. And there was also a counterpoint that if we don't have, an appropriate fire department, then we can't respond to our elderly residents who would need, a fire department and ambulance to respond in order to get them the help that they need if there's a fall or other emergency, which, frankly, will happen more often, when, sometimes the older you get or, the more health problems that you have. So there really was a lot of good discussion about pros and cons and ups and downs. We even found out some information from Chief Fells about how one of our neighboring communities would get emergency calls from North College Hill and just kind of pass them on and not respond to them. So, that's something that caused me to, some concern. There wasn't any really universal agreement on anything except that, we needed to do something. And I think that the result that we came up with really was a compromise among all of the various viewpoints. So I will certainly see about inviting the entire task force to a meeting so that you can ask those questions. But just from my memory in my mind, that was kind of what took place with that task force.
I wonder how, I thought I'd read that, I know how much mine went up, but that the recent auditors evaluations of properties, I think something like the average is 20% increase. Wonder how that changes the calculation.
Mine went up 10,000 ish.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, mine went up a lot. I'm going to be paying probably 15-20% more a month in property taxes. So I'm just kind of wondering how that might affect things.
Yeah, it might help a lot of the general fund issue.
Oh, okay.
Because I thought Ron told us that it was slated to go down. Property values were slated to go down. And I don't think they did. I thought he said like 4%. They're supposed to go down 4%.
From what I've read across Hamilton County, they've gone up on average 20%. So I don't know, like that's a lot.
I agree, but I believe Ron had heard differently or told us differently a while ago.
Well, I'm glad he's wrong.
Yeah, I think.
Well, it depends on your perspective. My council hat says I'm glad he's wrong, but my checkbook, my personal checkbook says, ouch.
Yeah, I just know that it's right now to try to buy a house, houses are, they're priced really, they're priced high and there's a lot of competition to buy houses right now. So that's probably why, your home values went up, which is not a bad thing,
Well, on the surface, it's good if you want to sell. If you have no intent on selling anytime soon, it just means, you're gonna be paying a little bit more a month for your property taxes. But it's good for us because that alleviates some of our concern for reduced funding coming forward. It actually means we're going to get a little bit of additional money.
I think that definitely will probably impact the findings, and I'll follow up on that. So I'm gonna put that under action items.
Well, but you got to probably, I think you have to be careful overreacting that because,
Right,
what goes up can come down again, right? And vice versa.
right.
I mean, um, it's optimistic that during, this relatively crappy economic time that it's gone up rather than down. That's actually a little bit mind-boggling to me.
It's a
But nonetheless,
triennial thing. They do a reevaluation every 3 years. Well, it's like a 6-year thing, and then they do something in the middle. So this is the triennial part of that.
yeah, well, it's a seller's market right now too. So I guess in 3 years, if it's a buyer's market, maybe it'll slide back down. Who knows?
Definitely a seller's market. I agree. Okay, so I have that as an action item. I will definitely figure out, number one, if we can invite all of the fire task force people to a meeting, and number two, but I don't want to get bogged down in that discussion. Because we definitely have to move on that, but I'll definitely follow up on that and try to do a quick turnaround on that. So with that, I did send you all a piece of legislation that was referred to our committee, a resolution about safe routes to schools. Did everybody have a chance to kind of glance at that at least?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask Beth and Mr. Miller and Matt if, to kind of chime in, since you guys have, I think you guys have kids in North College Hill schools, and do your kids walk to school, or do you drop them off? What do you think about this?
Well, my kids currently don't attend NCH anymore, but when we used to walk to school, and being so close to the building, the people that drove like crazies were the parents dropping their kids off. So nobody wants to stop at the stop signs and all that. So yeah, I don't know.
So
Depends.
It's just weird, I don't know.
So right quick though, I read that the LPA, meaning us, right? We pay 100% of the cost of what is determined by the state and federal highway administration. But like, what is 100% of that cost? Like, I'm looking for how much we hook for, and I don't think I can see it. So I don't want to agree to pay for anything that I don't know the ticket for. The LPA further agrees to pay 100% of the cost of features requested by the LPA. What did we request? Like, I remember starting this whole process out with ODOT and doing the traffic study, but I don't remember what we requested. And I do not see a ticket cost. And if it can come out of our street fund, because this can't come out of our general fund, we're already strapped. Speaking on behalf of me, of course. And I'm not comfortable bringing anything out that says that we agree to pay for something that doesn't have a price tag to it. Like, I'm not in this committee. I'm sorry, I'm bitching, but should there be an exhibit A that we don't have?
This is what I received. Uh,
Like, if we're authorizing the city administrator to enter into an agreement and sign a contract, this has to be over X amount of money, but from what fund? What are we having done? I don't even know what we're having done.
I thought that there was some kind of grant or something about this.
It was a study. So from my knowledge, back in the day, we had a study done of the areas around the schools. And of course, we all know that we can control the traffic there better. We all know that it's going to be expensive to do so. Outside of that came the traffic lights, how we just replaced the motherboards and the computers in those to slow the traffic down a little bit. There was talks at one point in time of having like little solar panels on top of the stop signs to create like flashing stop lights to get people to stop, but that's as far as it went. But as far as like, this is the same thing with the traffic calming that we asked for. We asked for like traffic calming, we got a piece of legislation. Now we're asking for pedestrian improvements, and we have that, like, this is literally an open check. And I don't know.
Is this? I'm sorry. Now I'm
Okay,
getting
so
wrapped
apparently
around.
the cost is supposed to be paid for by ODOT. And what we can do, or what my suggestion is that we put this on the council agenda and then
Hold on.
ask.
Hold on one second
wait.
though. Hold on. So therefore be it ordained by the city of North College Hill of Hamilton County, Ohio, hereinafter referred to as the
LPA,
LPA.
right.
Okay. The LPA further agrees to pay 100% of the cost of those features requested by the LPA. Like, the LPA agrees to participate in the cost of the project. Like, the LPA agrees that the change orders, work contracts, like.
Now, my understanding is that, I'm just looking at notes, and my understanding is that this is going to be paid for by ODOT, and also that this is we're partnering with North College Hill School, the school district. But again, that is from my limited information.
Yes, ma'am. So I guess my question is this will be, but what is the this? What is the what? Like, what are we? Like, it's not lined out, like, and I know this is nothing to do with you, but like,
Amber,
Or if you look at
what
the
is
very
the
top,
project?
if you look at the very top in the bold, I mean, I agree it does not go into any detail, but it says including curb bump outs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons, new signage and markings, as well as other pedestrian improvements. And I agree 1,000,000% that there's no specificity in that, but at least that gives you the 50,000 foot view of what their plan, at least what they intend to do.
Yeah, but doesn't this also say that somewhere in here that we agree to pay for the curves? No.
Does say
repair
that,
curb.
yeah.
No, yeah, you're right. It says the LPA further agrees to pay 100% of the cost to install curb ramps at all necessary intersections to ensure compliance with the ADA. But are they putting in new curb ramps somewhere that we already don't have them? Like, how much money are we going to spend? What's coming out of our already strapped budget for this, I guess, is my concern.
Okay, so again, my suggestion is that we put it on the agenda. Obviously, if we are not comfortable with it staying on the agenda, we can pull it right back off. But we need to put it on the agenda so that we can ask the city manager those questions. I don't want it to just sit in agenda or sit in our committee for another month while we get this person here and that person here. We have some questions for the city manager who, I think that he would have the answers to the questions. We can just put it on the agenda and ask him all of those questions. And I think, we
When's the
should,
deadline for this to be passed?
I don't know that answer to that either, Ms. Bailey. I have no idea.
When did he give it to you?
He gave this, okay, now that's my fault. I don't check my city email.
Did he give it
on
to
a
you
regular
more than a month ago?
No, it was not more than a
Okay.
month ago.
So it was in time for this committee, yeah?
Yes, it was in time for the committee for sure.
This is my entire problem with deadlines and whatnot, is we are being slapped in the face with shit like this that says, get this through real quick, but we only have 25% of the information. It's not on you,
Okay,
Ms.
well,
Underwood.
yeah, I know, but here it's an easy fix, right? We put it on the agenda and we ask all of those questions, and let's talk about the questions that we want the answers to. Let me write them down. Let's
Hey, Erica,
talk about, yeah, huh?
can we also invite the police chief? Because I know when I went on the little ride around excursion about safe routes to school, it was about 3 years ago. And I'm not
Mhm.
kidding. It was about 3 years ago. And I thought Strand was literally driving the bus.
He was.
Because he was driving the van we were in. But I thought, so he might have more answers because that was even pre-Ron. Ron was not in the vehicle. So he might have more answers than Ron does, is kind of where I was going with that.
Hey, if I could sneak in a little here,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure this was done according to a grant, and the school itself had a committee, right? That was led by Eugene Blaylock, the superintendent.
It was a
So,
joint committee.
well, I don't think this one was. I was on it for a hair, and it was completely within the school board. So I think this is a later one. I think you're talking about something earlier. I wasn't able to finish my duties on the committee, but it was only maybe 2 years ago, and it was just starting then. And there was no bus ride. Chief Fran did come in. There was some conversations, but I mean, honestly, Amber, I mean, if it came when it came, that would have been when the school board submitted it to us. So again, this is a scenario of a third party giving us something when they give it to us, and us having to get it done. We got to get it done. But nonetheless, a good source of information might also be Superintendent Blaylock.
Awesome.
Might have the most detailed information.
So, and all the more, and nonetheless, we both know that we are strapped for money, and this looks like another unencumbered expenditure that's
Ms.
coming up.
Bailey, I'm not suggesting that we should agree and pass this at the next city council meeting. What I would like to do is, I mean, we know what your concerns are. I think that we've gotten some good information
And
from
then, you know,
Mr.
though,
Mann.
so like,
got
if
some
you
really
put
good
this out on
information
a
from
city
Ms. Zorb.
council meeting floor,
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Underwood, if you
What?
put this out on a city, if you put this out, Ms. Underwood, if you put this out on a city council meeting floor to be read for first reading, after that first reading, just by the title, any amendments or attachments or crossouts, those have to be read in a city council meeting.
Okay,
So-
so I mean, but what else are we doing? I mean, we're not doing anything else. We're not doing anything else. If you have questions about this, let's ask the questions. Let's get the police chief there if we need to. Let's ask the questions that you have. I don't see why. I mean, I think we can get this done.
I don't think it's a question of getting it done. I think it's a question of how much time are we going to go through this in a council meeting and look like sitting ducks to get it done. But hey, bring it out. I'm not in this committee. Bring it out. I'll make the amendments or try to.
Well, of course, you can make it. I think we can make the amendments that we need to, but I think that if you have some questions, we need to ask the questions. I mean, we don't need to, let's ask the questions.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean honestly, I guess I have a slightly different opinion than you do, Amber, about a couple things. I don't care about, you know, trudging through things in council meetings occasionally. I mean, quite frankly, I think if people are more entitled to watch anything, they're probably going to watch council meetings. I don't know if the word entitled was right, but they're more likely to watch anything. It's going to be a regular council meeting than a committee anyway. So people get to see a little bit more of the process. Um, I can tell you, I mean, you get a lot of feedback where people don't watch committees, and then they have this impression that council passes things without ever discussing them because they don't realize we've talked about it for 2 hours in a committee meeting. So,
Right, which
you
is
know,
why I like talking about it in a committee, because then it becomes more candid and a lot less orderly, procedurally, if you will. Like,
yeah, sometimes, but when you got to move, you got to move. I mean, these are just the trials of small government, and
what are we
you know,
moving on?
I
well,
think
I
that,
think Erica's kind of essentially suggested that we pass it on to regular council for 3 readings, and we get the information we need. I mean, your major concern is the finances of it. Where's the money source going to come from? I mean, I agree. That's my major concern.
What's
But
the
we,
scope of the project?
well, that too. I mean, if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. If we got to talk about it a little bit, I mean, I none of it. I mean, from what I remember, the options that were talked about. I mean, it's like putting a blinking light over a crosswalk. I mean, none of it's major infrastructure changes. I mean, most of the things that are going to be suggested are going to be um, blinking lights and things like that to make things a little bit safer. That's the point. None of it's going to be major infrastructure overhauls. So I don't think it's going to be anything mind blowing or controversial by any stretch of the imagination. I think the major question everybody's going to have is the same one you have: is how much money.
So, Ms. Underwood,
yes.
at the risk of belaboring this subject even longer, I'm wondering if there's maybe a compromise somewhere in the middle. And the compromise that I'm proposing is this would only go on council's agenda if we receive the supporting documentation that lists in detail what the project entails and perhaps cost, or at least estimated cost. And if we receive that prior, and we'll come up with a date prior to the council meeting, then we would agree that it can be moved out of committee.
How about Wednesday at 10 p.m. like everything else?
I would be okay with that as long as it's met. And if it's not met, then it doesn't go on the agenda.
Uh,
Wednesday at 10
I
p.m.
don't,
That's 2 days.
know if I agree with
Like,
that. I think
I
if we,
don't.
I think
I
if we
hate
have,
ultimatums.
no, I think if we have questions,
But actually, it's not an ultimatum. It's actually council rules to begin with.
And you're
I mean,
forwarding
that is council
attachment
rules.
A and attachment B. Sorry, Mary Jo. Like, you're literally forwarding 2 attachments that you already have done for this in time for the clerk to get it added to this piece of legislation, to not send us an amended agenda Sunday night at 10 p.m. like she's been doing.
I understand
in
all of
our
those things,
rules.
but here's my issue with what we've done for all of this entire year. Things get in our committees and they just sit and sit and sit and sit and sit.
Name
And
2.
primarily
Name
because
2.
the
I'm the only other
wage
chair.
ordinance.
No, ma'am. That started in January. That was out in March. That was felt in March. It was read again in April. It was redacted and re-edited by the law director in May. It came back out in June. No, Ordinance 6 was out before everybody. 7, 8 times before it was actually finalized. And yeah, you're right. We are on the 3rd copy of that to no avail of my own at all. I didn't know that
Ms.
they were going
Bailey,
to.
I'm not
No,
blaming
I
you
am.
for
I
anything,
am.
okay?
No, I
I'm not
am.
blaming
Nothing
anybody.
says
I'm just
I
saying
am.
that,
No, well, you can't say
Whoa,
that
whoa,
knowing. No, ma'am.
guys.
No, sir. You
listen,
cannot say that
this is
knowing.
not staying in this committee. That's point blank period. It's not
There's
staying in
only
this
one
committee.
other committee chair, Mr. Miller Novak, and that is myself.
Okay,
Well,
I'm not
hey,
blaming anybody for anything.
You cannot
Okay.
make that comment. I'm tired of those comments blaming me. There is no other.
No, I'm not
committee chair
blaming
other
you
than
for, but
myself.
it's not, I'm not saying it is your fault. I am
So you're
saying that,
willing to put something on council floor that is half-assed at best.
okay, if we have
Okay.
questions and we don't have the answers to those questions,
Cool.
what good does it do us to sit here going round and round in circles about asking the same questions?
What
We
good
need-
does it do us to put it in front of an entire council that is going to confuse more people other than to get the correct information the first time to
This
get it
is our
out?
job. I mean, confuse people how? If we're
Because we
if
get
we're
4 and 5
asking
versions
questions
of the
about
same
it.
thing. We get 4 and 5 versions of the same thing over and over and over again, and no one is ever on the same page. My question is, what is wrong with this letting this piece of legislation sit into a committee until it gets all of the following attachment A, B, C, all of the scope?
I
the
don't
cost,
think that there are
everything.
any attachments to this. I mean, I don't know that any
So you're
attachments
comfortable.
exist.
So you're comfortable putting this on the council floor just the way it is, with the budget the way that it is, with the scope not written in this?
Again, we
Okay.
have questions. We have questions about it, and
It's questionable at best, bro. It is
Okay.
questionable at best.
And if we have questions, the person we need to ask is the city administrator and also the finance director. Those are the people that we need to ask the question to. And if we don't want there to be a second reading, we can ask that it be removed from the agenda. We don't have to leave it on the agenda. We can put it on the agenda so that we can have our issues and our questions addressed. We don't have to leave it on the agenda for the second and third reading. We can take it off of the agenda if we're not comfortable with what we hear. But I feel like we need those questions answered. I can't answer those questions for you. I don't have the answers.
I'm not asking you to. I guess I'm asking where, the administration is always part of the first committee meetings of the month. Where are they when they bring something like this out?
Again, okay, so I guess I don't see the issue with putting it on the agenda and then asking the questions we need to ask. If we don't get the answers we want, we don't get the information we want, we pull it off the agenda. We've done that before. We've taken things off, we've taken legislation off the agenda when we didn't like
Well,
the answers, we didn't like the supporting
So
documents.
in
We just took it off the agenda.
So in 2020, I can tell you the difference is that the stuff that has never made it to the agenda or has been taken off of the agenda has never even been brought to a committee at all. I have never, or my committee members have never gotten a piece of legislation halfway written and says, hey, put this on the agenda, or hey, look at this. It always ends up on the agenda because it's always given to the clerk saying, hey, or the president, this needs to go on the agenda. And that's why we take it off, is because 99%, 100% of the time, the committees haven't even read it. Now I'm reading this, it's not worthy of the agenda. I know it's not worthy of the agenda, and we're going to put it on there
on the
anyway.
agenda. I don't agree that it's not worthy of the agenda. I think
That's
it
why I
needs to be on
corrected
the agenda.
myself. Yes, ma'am, that is why I corrected myself. This is not worthy to go on an agenda because you only have 30% of the information. Meanwhile, they are comfortable with putting stuff on the agenda that they give 100% of the information of, but nobody on council gets to read it until we get that email that says, this is on the agenda, the amended agenda. I'm sorry, I have to resend this. And here we are. So yeah, let's put it on the agenda.
I just
We'll move
believe.
it. You're right. Yes, ma'am. We'll put it on the agenda.
Here's what I will say to you, Ms. Bailey.
You don't have to. We'll
If
put it on the agenda. I'm not part of
if
this
you're-
committee. It should go into finance. Let's see
if your questions
No,
If
ma'am,
your
you
que-
can't answer them.
No, I can't answer them. But if your questions are not answered, then I will ask that it be removed from the agenda. It's just, it requires a motion. I just don't understand why we can't, move it along.
Why would you? If none of the information is there, why would you knowingly put this on an agenda? For the
Okay,
sake of-
okay. Hey. Enough. Enough. You guys are talking over one another and you're not letting anybody finish. Amber, just everybody chill for a second. It's just a preference issue, okay? Nobody's necessarily wrong. No one's necessarily right. These things are preferences. This committee is going to vote. If other people feel a different way, it can be addressed in the council meeting. This is going nowhere, and it's going nowhere fast. It's just creating animosity over nothing. The reality is, we can get the information if we choose to do it during the 3 readings and make the decision by the time of the 3rd reading on council. That is one option. That is one person's preference. Quite honestly, it's one of my preferences. I like sometimes to just learn the information during discussion, during legislation. Everybody's there. Everybody can weigh in. Your preference is to do it in a committee. No one's right. No one's wrong. These are preference issues. The argument is not productive, not over preference. So let's just stop. Let's just call the question. Either it goes or it doesn't, and it can go somewhere else later on.
Okay,
So at the risk of being odd man out, I happen to agree with Amber on this particular topic, that I would like to see the information prior to a meeting and not just get it at a meeting. So my preference would be similar to Miss Bailey's preference.
Okay, that's
okay,
cool. You're
All right.
allowed to have a preference. We don't need to shame each other over our preferences.
I know.
It's fine.
I'm just telling you what mine is also.
That's cool. So, I mean, if we want, we can do a little committee vote and decide what we do. Let's just figure it out, man. I mean, honestly, if the bigger question's money, then, maybe it would be more appropriate for finance committee anyways. Honestly, from what I remember of the things that were proposed, I don't think anybody's going to have a dispute that any of the ideas are not good ideas. They're not earth shattering. They're not big infrastructure changes. They're blinking lights and things like that. So, let's just figure it out. Let's decide whether or not we want to send it back up to council. My feeling is we should, and we should ask for the information in the meantime. And if it comes down to being a purely dollar question, this isn't the proper committee anyways, right? So it might as well go back to council, because if the question's primarily a dollar sign question, then it should be funneled back to the finance committee and not this committee. That's my feeling.
It does
So,
mention something about the LPA agrees that if federal funds are used. So maybe there is a grant lingering out there. And you know what? If there is, then again, this might all just be a whole lot of hot air being blown around for no reason. So
I think
Again,
that's
let's
the
get
case.
the information. Yeah.
I think that's the case, Mary Jo. From what I remember in the introductory meeting that I went to, I'm almost positive there was a grant, and that was the whole entire point of the committee at the school board, was to do this. My recollection is the only reason it's coming to us is just to approve, because the school doesn't have it's a grant given to the schools to make suggestions for a safer route for kids to get to school, right? So the school kind of comes up with the ideas, they come up with the brain, and they choose how they're going to protect their kids. But ultimately, because it puts a blinking light over a road, council, like the legislative body of the city, has to approve it as well, because we control the roads and streets. But they come up with the ideas. I'm pretty sure that most, if not all of it's paid from I'm talking about the same committee meeting, I'm almost positive that's paid for almost entirely by grant money.
Okay, well, so what do you think, Mr. Miller Novak?
Well, I'm fine sending it back to council because I think if there's any debate and it needs to be in a committee, it probably needs to be in finance. I think the bigger debate will be money, if there even is a money debate, not whether or not we'd like a blinking light over a crosswalk. I think we all agree we would.
Okay, so there's three of us who are on the committee who are here today. Or no, Beth is here. Beth, what do you think?
Hold on. Sorry, had to mute. I say could go to council, we get our questions asked, and if you need to move it back to committee, move it back to committee.
Okay, so I think that we're mostly on the same page, and Mary Jo, what I will say to you, or Ms. Orb, if that's more appropriate, what I will say to you is if your questions are not answered, can you just don't hint, tell me that your questions haven't been answered. Even if you don't want to say it out loud, shoot me a text. Tell me my questions aren't answered. I will take it back off of the agenda. I'll make that motion and pull it back into committee. Okay.
Right quick.
Yes.
Would anybody
I
like,
appreciate that.
would anybody like the roadway safety audits and the safe route to schools,
No.
like research before this? No, you don't want anything that actually led up to the piece of legislation.
What I would like to do, actually,
I'm nope. You said no.
Yes.
No, thank
I would like a list of questions to ask the administration. I want to make sure.
you.
Okay, well, I guess she's frustrated with me, and I can understand that.
So do you want my questions in writing prior to the meeting, or do you want me to ask them in the meeting? Or because you said I just want to make sure I understand the
No,
the
actually,
process here.
Ms. Orb, you don't have to give me any of your questions in the meeting. But what I will tell you is that, as the chair, I will take ownership and responsibility for like doing the confrontation if there needs to be one, to say, hey, you're not giving us enough information here. I move that this go back to my committee until you give us what we're asking for. That's what I'm saying to you. I don't need you to send me I don't need to micromanage a thing. All I'm saying is that, first of all, I'm not interested in reading 50 pages of reports. I don't have time to do that.
I just wanted to make sure I understood. So
yeah,
all right, we're good. We're good.
I'm not trying to micromanage anything.
And I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
not afraid to ask a question in a council meeting. So we're
yeah,
good. All right, we're good.
Okay. It
All right.
sounds like we're mostly on the same page, and I'm hoping that, Ms. Orb, I don't want you to think that we're kind of bulldozing over you, because I don't want to do that. I want us to work together here. So, but what I will say to you is, if your questions aren't being answered, I will move that I'm back.
And I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. On we go. Speed hump program.
I appreciate you recognizing my preference.
I appreciate you not leaving the meeting.
Holy cow.
Tense.
All right.
Listen, you know what? I'm tickled because this is what I do for a living. Like literally. And Mr. Miller Novak, he's like the judge who kind of steps in like, hey, I'm in council in chambers now.
It kind of felt like Dad, but I'm not sure.
Shut up. Oh well. Yeah.
It's like I get an adrenaline rush when I'm like, and I think it was a debate, and no, there's no right or wrong answer, but that's like, it's like why I like what I do, actually. Okay, so the old business, the speed hump program, which is the program that never seems to go away. It just the gift that keeps on giving. I actually got some new information. There are some speed humps that are removable that cost maybe 50 to $100 a piece. That
Oh, wow.
our our street people can actually install in the streets. I think Ms. Zorb asked that. Did you ask that question? So I got
Mhm.
that information, and that's something I think we can, 50 to $100 per speed bump, and then, they can install it. They can move them around. I think we can all get behind that.
Yeah, because
That sounds
I think
unbelievable.
I think the one of the biggest push, I'll use the term pushback, and I don't know if it's the right one or not, but one of the biggest oppositions to it was the snowplows and how they would mess up the snowplows. I know the other one is like the ambulance and all that. But as far as the snowplow, if we say no speed humps during January to, I don't know, beginning of March, when most of the snow would be out, then maybe that helps alleviate that issue. I don't know. Again, I'm looking for a compromise, but do not bite my head off for it.
Oh,
Not personal, not personal. It wasn't you. It wasn't you.
I think that the removable ones solve a lot of problems. And Mr. Miller Novak, whether you believe it or not, that is an accurate price tag for those speed humps.
That's amazing. Is there something wrong with them? Do they
No.
eat your tires or something?
They're removable. So I would imagine if a very resourceful person who lives on the street can go out there and get them up or something. I don't know. I mean,
I wouldn't talk like that. You're planting a seed.
Oh,
again, I
no.
don't know. I do know that they're, what Ms. Orb says has some merit. Like our street folks can put them out, install them, and remove them, and it's not going to cause damage to the street. It's not going to cause damage to anything, and if we just use them in the summertime where there's kids running around playing in the street or playing outside, I think that solves our problems. And it's not going to break the bank, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm interested. I mean, wow, that's cheap.
Okay, so I will reach out to Bill about that to see what our next steps are to make that happen. So maybe after this winter season, like when it starts getting warm again, we can have these things installed and ready to go.
Okay.
Putting that under action items. It's like my new agenda thing. Okay. All right. The CARES Act purchase of Surface computers. I think that we safely moved that out of committee, and that's in front of council. Is that right? Yes?
Sure.
No? I think it was. I don't know. Somebody tell me if I can take this out of old business.
So
I don't remember, but
I don't either.
go ahead.
I didn't mean to step on you, Beth. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I've got 2 dogs going at it right now, like having fun.
Uh-oh.
So, no, they're playing. I don't remember what we last said in council about the Surface computers. I don't even know. I mean, who's all for it and who's not. I don't. If
See,
there's no
I
money
just,
there, I say pass on it.
yeah, I think the thing was supposed to be if there was grant money for them or something to that effect. But I mean, we don't know if there is or if there isn't. And I could have swore that there were some people on council who said, can I opt out of that? Because I don't want one. Like Marjorie, or Miss Anderson, I should say. She already has one, so she didn't want another one. And
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree. I'm in that camp. Like, I don't mind if there's enough, because it's kind of like use it or lose it, those funds, and you have like a
right.
deadline, is my understanding. So, I mean, if it's okay, I mean, I guess, like, we could always buy them for the city, and the city can have them. I mean, they're not going to become the property member of the individuals. I'm assuming they'd be the city's property that would be lended out to anybody sitting on city council at the time. And you'd have to return it when your term's done. I would opt out though. I got a Surface Pro. I got enough technology in my life between my job and personal, so I don't need another device.
Okay, so is I mean, so did we effectively move this out of our committee, or what do I need to do here?
I can
Move
tell
it.
you that I have, and Beth, I just stepped on you again. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, that was all. I just one word. Go ahead.
All right. So I have a motion from another city that that was sent to me. And what I think is that if anything, perhaps we should send information to Mr. Dieters to have him write up some type of legislation that would correspond, because apparently they do it at the city that I'm referring to. They handle stuff like this in a motion. And I am not as comfortable with that in a motion as I would be in, say, a resolution. And the way they have it, formatted is authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase agreement with their vendor. So we would substitute our vendor, and that's to purchase quantity, however many we want, Surface Pros or whatever, right? And just line item out the items to say, it should be used for city business and blah, 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 blah. And actually this even they have a not to exceed number on there, and also to use CARES fund as their sourcing. So, I mean, they cover a lot more information than I feel we might if we just do it in a motion.
Okay, that
I
makes
don't know.
sense.
So, would you like me to send this to you?
Yes, please. So I will put that on my action items. Follow up to Bill Dieters about drafting a resolution using CARES Act funds. And giving people the opportunity to opt out if that's what they want to do. Because Mr. Miller Novak has enough technology in his life.
Too much.
Okay. All right.
Trump rocks.
Okay, so new business. Any new business? No, I don't hear any new business. Thank goodness. Hearing none. I will make sure that everybody gets copies of these meeting minutes within a reasonable amount of time. I might have to review this meeting again to make sure all of my notes are accurate, since a part of the time I wasn't actually taking notes. I was running my mouth. So with that, if it's okay with everybody, I will adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
good. Alrighty.
All right, I'm
All
good.
right.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Good
You guys
night.
have a good evening.
Welcome.